Welcome to RAD, Real Adventure Discovery. This is adventure. All right, today's the day. I'm standing here at Timberline Trail up in Mount Hood, and I'm about to hike the Timberline Trail around Mount Hood, as you see behind me. The trail winds around, takes a few days. It's about 41 miles. So this is my next RAD adventure. Here we get a view of the front entry area to the lodge before heading up the trail. There's a nice restaurant in the lodge area. Obviously there's accommodations. If you can find a reservation, you got to look ahead of time. If it's last minute, you may be able to go to like online or hotels.com or something like that. As you leave the Timberline Lodge, the first thing it does is take you up a steep incline, and there's a paved pathway. But you'll see the marker here, Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail, number 2000. To the north or to my left, Canada is 550 miles. To my right or to the south, Mexico is 2,108 miles. So Pacific Crest Trail connects with the Timberline Trail right here at the Timberline Lodge. And they both stay together for about 15 miles or so, and then Pacific Crest Trail will split off to the north, and Timberline Trail on the northwest side of Mount Hood. Timberline Trail will split off to the right and hug the back side of the mountain heading towards Cloud Cap. You can see the peak there in the summit, and behind me is the lodge where I just came up from. But in the distance, you can see Mount Jefferson. As you head west from the lodge to begin the trail, it just kind of winds its way along. There's not much elevation change immediately, but you can see the ski lifts here. This is the second one that I'm passing. Mount Hood remains in operation pretty late into the year. A lot of the ski lift operations close in March or April, depending on where they're at. Up here, they're operating well into July and August. They're not operating right now, but I'm not sure how big of a break they'll have. But we start at about 6,500 feet elevation, and there's quite a bit of elevation changes throughout this hike around the Timberline Trail. And so we may drop as low as 3,000 or 3,500, but we will also climb back up as high as about 8,500 feet elevation. The summit of Mount Hood is well over 11,000. I'm not sure the exact number. It's like 11,427, but that's just me guessing. I know it's somewhere in there. So my goal today is to work my way around this end on the southwest side, and there's a plateau by Zigzag Mountain near Paradise Park. I'm going to try to get past there and drop down Zigzag Mountain. Hopefully I can set up camp near the Sandy River, and we'll see how that goes. Early on, you'll see a few turnoffs. Right here it says Mountaineer Trail number 798, and so some people do register to hike the summit, the climbers, and you don't want to make a right or a left turn here, because you'll end up in the wrong direction. But parallel to me, you can see Pacific Crest Trail and Timberline Trail both follow each other. And Paradise Park, if you ever have a chance, it's probably 7 or 8 miles from the lodge, so it would be a good 16-mile hike day to see Paradise Park if you wanted to try to do that in a day. But you could camp out and then hike back the following day. Paradise Park is definitely something, if you ever come to Mount Hood, even if you don't have the time to do the Timberline Trail all the way around the mountain, Paradise Park is something beautiful to see. There's a registration box up ahead, and I'll fill out my details. The registration box is your permit for the hike, just in case you get lost. Never forget to fill out your details and the details of what you plan for your trip, where you plan, or how many nights you plan to stay out in the wilderness. So it's definitely important to fill those details out. And if you don't have a printed map, take a picture of the map right here on the board, so you can definitely take a look and know your limits and know about how far you want to try to reach, and definitely plan your trip out. Most people do this in about 3 days, the 41-mile hike. Some people do it in 2. A few extreme people do it in a day, but definitely leaning on the side of 2 full days. Here's Sand Canyon. It says West Branch. The first time I hiked Mount Hood was 2017, and it was 4th of July weekend, and there was still 5 to 6 feet of snow covering the ground. This whole area right here covered in snow. Pretty certain my 2 sons and I actually just went straight across this. Had to climb up a little bit, but there was so much snow that we couldn't find the trail itself. And the whole first day, from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. that night, we might have got 7 or 8 miles. But we did get out of the snow and ice by the time we set up camp that first night. But it was a very long day. There are a few shortcuts along the way, but most of the time they're very dangerous shortcuts. So I would recommend you stay along the pathway. Different times of the year, the terrain will be covered in ice. Most of the time it's covered in snow and ice until late July, almost early August. So that's something to keep in mind when planning your trip. It's September 25th, 2025, and so the weather's great right now. It's in probably the high 60s, and the only other flip side to that is the overnight lows could be very cold and even down into freezing temperatures. But I think it's easier to stay warm overnight than it is to cool off during the day. Along the Timberline Trail and Pacific Crest, from time to time you'll see little clearings like this. And while we're still closer to the lodge, there are different areas you can camp, and you can set up wherever you see a flat spot. You just don't want to go off too far into the wilderness, but you'll see clearings and things like that that you can use. This is an area where, as you descend, you'll start to see a lot of switchbacks. Now, these are not the normal switchbacks. Some of these you might go a half mile before you switch back on your way down or around one of the ridge areas. So you get a good mix of sunlight and then shade, and then it'll cool off before you come back out of the woods on the other side and back into the sunlight again. So it's a really nice, really scenic route. Just want to make sure you plan with enough time to enjoy all that you're going to see along the way. As I come around the southwest side, get our first glimpse of Mount Hood from this angle. And you'll see some steep ridges off over here to my left. And we'll cross that ridge. There'll be another really steep ridge, and that's where Zigzag Mountain is. We'll have to wind all the way down, cross the Sandy River, and head over towards Ramona Falls and work my way all the way back up the ridge around the other side there. So nothing goes straight here. Everything goes zigzag and back and forth to work your way around and get back up to the other side of the ridges. Well, I came around to the southwest side. There's a little summit here. You can see Mount Hood summit there. You see the ridge here drops way down into this valley. The trail continues over this way to the left, and it'll wind its way around for a ways before you drop down what is called Zigzag Mountain to Sandy River. It's early beginning part of the fall right now, so a lot of the plants are dying or colors are changing right now, as you see on some of the trees. If you're here in July or August, you'll definitely see more plants, more flowers. But you'll see this ridge, as I pointed out a minute ago. We're working our way down this ridge. I already hit my first switchback. Kind of winding my way down towards the water. It'll be the first water crossing. This one's not a big water crossing, but it's on the way towards the Sandy River, which is a little bit bigger water crossing. One thing to note is it's always better when there's a bigger river with heavy water flow. It's better to do the river crossing earlier in the day or in the morning before the sun comes up and the heat of the day. Oftentimes there's a lot of snow melt and the water flow will be a lot faster and a lot more dangerous later on in the day. So if you can, you try to plan it out to do your river crossing in the early part of the day. Here you'll see some water flowing off the mountain down towards that river. And you can see little pockets where the water flows right under the walkways. So there's all kinds of terrain you have to watch out for: mud, rock, tree branches, things like that. Just want to be careful and wear some good shoes so you don't twist your ankle. See the terrain here as I'm descending towards the water still. Very rocky terrain. You can see some loose rocks like right there that are hanging down. So the trail is very unpredictable. Even if you have hiked the trail before, each year the snow, ice, rain, trees falling, rock fall, fire, everything like that changes this trail from year to year. And some years you can't go along the same pathway as you could in the past. Some of these trails in the past 5 years have been blocked off, and just after Ramona Falls we'll see one of the trails that is open again. But for several years that trail was blocked and we had to go around and follow the Pacific Crest Trail. So always be mindful that you're gonna have to adapt to the changing trail, and sometimes you'll be climbing over trees that have fallen, and sometimes climbing over rocks that have fallen off of ridges. Coming up on first water crossing here. When you come up on a waterway, oftentimes you'll see little stacks of rocks, and they're called cairns. And oftentimes people will stack those up, for one, to give you a guide as to which direction you should be going. But most often you'll see them after you cross the waterway as a guide to where the trail continues. Sometimes it's an easier route to cross the water, but always it's the pathway, so that you know which direction you need to follow. So you could see a log right here, like people have maybe used that or marked an area out. Down lower, looks like this is probably a safer crossing, but again, depending on your shoes, you know, you have to have waterproof shoes. The other thing to keep in mind is undo your buckles on your chest and your waist before you cross the water. People have drowned because they didn't unhook themselves before crossing. So definitely important, make sure you unhook before you try to cross the waterway. Because if you fall, you want to have the ability to get out from your pack and not have it drag you under the water. Now this may not be a steep waterway, but no, regardless, just make it a habit. Unhook your buckle at your waist and your chest to make sure you can sling that pack off. I'm going to try to cross in this area here. Looks like it's a shallower area. I'm sure I'm going to get my boots a little wet, but I'd rather take that risk. I get my boots a little wet than to have to fall from a steeper area. So definitely got to plan your steps out and look at where your next step's going to be. So these are waterproof. I don't think that they're full watertight, but I was able to trek across without soaking my feet. I'm gonna get some water here and fill up my pack for my water filter. I'm using a Sawyer water filter, and you want to get to know or look at the map, get to know the terrain. Make sure that you plan out how far you're going to need to go before you can get water again. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. At the end of the summer, you might have fewer options because Mount Hood is a glacier. So if it's July or August, you'll probably have plenty of opportunities to get water. So when you're going to collect water, one of the things I like to do is collect it off of a rock. And you want to try as much as you can to work your way upstream and collect water there, not downstream. So whenever there's trail crossings and people crossing the waterway, just because there's foot traffic and everything else, try to go up above the foot crossings on the waterways to collect your water. After climbing the ridge from that first water crossing, I believe Zigzag River, there's a turnoff, right here to the right after you climb up that ridge. And that turnoff goes to Paradise Park. Now the views are really spectacular. It is a bit of a climb at this south end if you go this way. Depending on what you're trying to do, if you're just going to Paradise Park, it's not a bad route. If you continue straight on the Timberline Trail, you'll come to a plateau right about that area or just prior. There's a turnoff to the right before a ridge, and it goes up to the far end of Paradise Park. Now I've entered from that side and looped and came back and returned here back to the lodge. That's 8 miles in and 8 miles back to the lodge. So depending if you wanted to do a 16-mile day hike or 8 mile with an overnight camp and then an 8 mile return. There's a really nice meadow along the base area of Mount Hood with a good view. It's a really great place to stay if you were trying to do a 2-day hike, 8 miles each. It's a really great place to camp. It's like a sandy, flat meadow area with a really good view. So it's a bit of a climb with one switchback after the turnoff to Paradise Park, but now it's a little more gradual climb. I could see the daylight and the edge of the trees in the distance. Oftentimes you'll think, I almost made it to the peak, and then it'll turn back the other way and you still got more climbing to do. So not certain how far ahead to the peak of this ridge is, but the steepness of it has decreased. So it is a little bit steep right after the turnoff to Paradise Park. And then after the switchback, it kind of lightens up a little bit. So as I reach the top of this ridge, the trail continues to the right, but there's a nice viewpoint here. Look like this could be a great camp spot. The view, Mount Jefferson in the distance, that way. Really awesome view. As you come up on this trail marker, you'll see Paradise Park up to the right, and to the left, Trail 776, part of Paradise Park Trail, all the way down below at Little Zigzag Falls. I've done an episode on a hike up there and one of the Discovery scenery videos. This Paradise Park Trail, you can connect to it from down below. Now obviously if you're coming straight up instead of starting at the lodge, you'd have a lot more elevation to gain. Working our way around the west side, you get little pop-out viewpoints like this. The mountain in the background. I still see a lot of mushrooms along the side of the pathway. I wouldn't know what type of mushrooms they are, but a lot of times they're really close to the trail. You can see where people have kicked them, maybe not intentionally, but they get kicked and broken. You can hear the water flow. It's one of these crossing points where you can get water if you need to. But definitely, sometimes you'll hear water flow, and it'll actually be the top of a ridge where the wind is blowing. So sometimes it can fool you when you come up to the top of a ridge or when you come down to the bottom of a canyon. Here's another small stream. One of the nice things is that along the south and southwest, a good part of the north side, there's a lot of opportunities to get water. Sometimes on the north or northwest side, after Cloud Cap and Cooper Spur area, there's long stretches where you might not be able to get water. By long stretch, I mean, you know, anywhere from 5 to 7 or 7 to 8 miles. Made it across to the next ridge. Whew. You'll see the steep cliff drop off over here. First time when it was all covered in snow, we ended up going across and down that ridge over there. It started getting a little too steep. We realized we're heading the wrong direction. And then we came back up out of the hill there. We came over to this corner. It doesn't look like there's a pathway here, but this is a little pathway along this ridge, and it winds its way around to the other side. There's a plateau on the other side over here where those elderberries grow. Some of these meadows in the high elevation, they grow really good at certain times of year. Is another one of those areas. You see some massive rocks that have tumbled down from up above over time. As long as today isn't that time. I've already crossed over quite a few ridges. Each time you work your way down to a low point where the water flow is, you have to work yourself back up to the top of a ridge again on the other side. So some of these video clips might look like you're walking through a meadow the whole time, but in reality, it's a series of switchbacks, working your way down to a low point or a waterway, and then climbing your way back up out of it to the next ridge. And you keep doing that around the mountain for about 41 miles, and you get back to the lodge again. Getting close to the plateau there. I'm seeing some of these berries pretty small, so I'm not sure what to expect, but right now I'm seeing some, but they're not very big, so we'll see. Maybe as we get closer to the open sunlight area, I might find some larger berries. When you come through this area in certain times of year, you'll see people that actually hike out here with several quart or half-gallon size sealable containers, and they'll bring them along just to fill them with elderberries and take them back to make jam or pies. And so if you happen to come out here, take a hike on the Timberline Trail and see people carrying containers, try not to be harsh, don't judge. The berries are pretty good. I've eaten them right off the vine and or right off the bush, and they're not bad at all. So right here is Paradise Park Loop. So this is the far end, I would say on the northwest, not quite north, but northwest side at the end of Paradise Park Loop. Earlier I pointed out where that trail takes off from Timberline Pacific Crest, and this is where it comes back in. So you could start at the south side and come around, or you could stay on the Pacific Crest Timberline Trail to here, and just up ahead that way there's a really nice plateau. You can hike out here and stay the night, camp out, and have a beautiful view of the mountain in the morning, and then take Paradise Park Loop back to the lodge the next day. So right up ahead is the plateau, and it has a really nice view. Just a really great spot to camp. I'll probably be heading beyond this point today just for how I plan to hike around the mountain. There's some more of the mushrooms, as I mentioned. As you come down this last little slope towards the ridge, you can see all the leaves on the west side over here have already turned orange and red and yellow. But the trail continues right here to the left. You'll kind of see this little area here. You can cut through some of these areas where you've seen people do it already, and you'll see little sandy areas in here that are good spots if it's late and you need a place to camp. You can drop down to my left and find a nice dry spot to camp in. So first time I came up here, I just came out of the hills and the ice and the snow, and this was like an oasis up here to find a dry spot to camp in. But I'm gonna step over here, get a good view of Mount Hood. If you do camp over here, this is what you'll wake up to in the morning. So definitely beautiful spot. And made it to the first meadows at the top of Zigzag Mountain. I'm going to continue on from here. It'll wind its way down towards the Sandy River, which begins somewhere out here in the mountain, actually. You'll see waterfalls in the hillside over here. Just beautiful scenery. So if you do have a chance to make this hike, this first meadow is probably about 8 miles in, and you'll wake up in the morning to this. And all this area here, in the right time of year, you will find blueberries along the pathway just below here. So I'm just taking a little bit of an off-trail walk through the little sandy area. It'll drop down and reconnect with the trail, but there's so much to see along this ridge here So I'm just going to follow the ridge all the way back down. You see several areas like this where it's not perfectly flat, but it's good enough that you can set up a tent for the night. The main trail is off to my left, but it comes around right back into here. You pick up with the trail. Just about getting to the switchbacks here to my left. I'm going to break off here for a viewpoint. This is Zigzag Mountain, and see that waterfall down there. I'm going clockwise around Mount Hood. If you do the hike counterclockwise, towards the end of the hike, you have about a 3,500 foot elevation gain to make at Zigzag Mountain to get back up to the elevation about equal to the lodge. So when you're doing that clockwise, I mean, it's all relative. You're gonna climb up some ridges and down others, but you descend this 3,000 or 3,500 feet on very likely day one, depending on how early in the day you start. You'll descend 3,000 to 3,500 feet, and then the next day you'll be slowly, as you'll see tomorrow, I'll be slowly climbing back and reaching that elevation to the highest point, which is after Cloud Cap at Cooper Spur. There's another viewpoint off to the left. We're winding our way down. You could hear the water down below. We'll meet up with that river as it connects with the Sandy down at the bottom of Zigzag Mountain. As I'm descending, not into low elevation, but lower than I was, you'll see different kind of mushrooms down here compared to the ones that were at the upper elevation. There's quite a few off in this area. If you know what kind of mushrooms they are, comment and let us know. You can see the sun setting on the other side of the hill there. I'm sure it's probably about 6:30 p.m. and sunset right now is probably sometime before 7 p.m. I see another switchback. Working my way down an elevation all the way down. There's not too many camp spots as you're coming down Zigzag Mountain. You'll find a few off to the side or where there's kind of an opening before a steep drop off or something with a nice view. You'll find a few, But when you get down closer to the Sandy River on the left or the west side, you'll find there's several flat camp spots that can be used if they're available. And they're along what I believe is where the Zigzag River ties into the Sandy, but they're close to the Zigzag River. This is an area towards the bottom of Zigzag Mountain where you'll see a lot of fallen timber. If you spend too much time looking up, you'll probably see a fallen branch hanging from something that doesn't look so secure. So yeah, down here at the bottom or towards the bottom of the canyon, you see a lot of fallen timber. In some years, like during the lockdown, the volunteer groups weren't able to get up here and clear stuff off the trail. So a lot of these trails were restricted, and it was pretty rough to climb over and through a lot of stuff when they weren't able to clear it. You can hear the water now getting closer, winding my way down in elevation, getting closer to the campgrounds. Here's the first area where you start to see some flat camping spots. It'll keep descending, and there'll be a few more. All of them will be before reaching the Sandy River. And actually the river right here on my left will border several of the lower elevation camp spots. But you can see down below there, people will hike down and climb down just to be right next to the river and to camp right along the river. Well, there's the last few campsites there in the riverway. You tell we're coming out of the big tree forest area into a clearing. There's one more open area down here at the bottom of the trail. And then there's the river crossing. So with the sun in the sky, I have to make a choice if I want to set up camp. Here's the last little clearing here. I either set up camp here, or if I cross the river, I'm going to need to make it to Ramona Falls and hopefully have enough daylight. So came prepared with a headlamp just in case, but I'm going to take a look at how heavy the river flow is, make a decision on crossing today or in the morning. There's a few spots here where some rocks aren't too far apart. If you look down below, there's a branch run across the water. So I'm going to unclip my waist pack and my backpack here, and I'm going to take an attempt to cross. You can see the sun on the mountain above me there as it's setting in the distance. So, all right, let's see if I can find a decent place to cross. Well, I think this is about as good as it's going to get. So, here's where we cross. That wasn't bad at all. This is one of the cairns, but I came up a little ways before crossing, so I got to head back down a little bit to pick up the trail again. Sun's going down in the distance there, and I decided I was going to go ahead and continue on into the sunset and try to reach Ramona Falls. And there's plenty of spots to camp out over at Ramona Falls. I picked up on the pathway. Had to come back down, follow the river a little further than I expected, but then you finally pick up on the trail, see a few streams going by. We'll work our way across here, pick up the trail at the ridge over here. Well, I made it up out of the ridge from the Sandy River. To my left is the Ramona Falls parking lot. It's a little ways down. Maybe it's 2.5, 3 miles, but there's a loop trail that'll bring you from Ramona Falls parking up to Ramona Falls. Then you could loop around the other way. So I'm going to take a right, and I'm going to follow the Timberline Trail through Ramona Falls. The Timberline Trail, right after the falls, you cross a bridge and you turn to the right to stay on Timberline Trail number 600. If you stay straight after you cross the bridge at Ramona Falls, you'll stay on Pacific Crest Trail. Ironically, the two will meet up again at Top Spur Trailhead, and I won't get that far tonight, but my next stop is Ramona Falls. Just arrived at Ramona Falls. There's the bridge. There is Ramona Falls. Well, made it to Ramona Falls last night. Set up camp. It's getting dark a little early. Sunset's before 7, but there's still some light in the sky. Just like sunrise is at almost 7 a.m. up here, and it's 6:54, so you can't see the sun right now because of the mountains and the trees and everything, but a little bit of sunlight in the sky. So I've got my water filtered, got my tea set up with a hot water boiler, and the breakfast of champions right there, Pop-Tarts. Ready to get started. Today I'll be leaving Ramona Falls, going through Muddy Fork. I'll pass Top Spur. There's a little trailhead there where the Pacific Crest Trail intersects with Timberline Trail. But then I'll keep going on the Timberline up towards Elk Grove, some meadows there before reaching Cloud Cap, and we'll see where we're at for the day by then. Somewhere either between Cloud Cap or maybe just a little bit beyond there will be good for the day. So it's almost 7 a.m. and we'll see how the day goes and how long it takes for the hike. We're starting the day at Ramona Falls this morning. It's a really nice view. There is a parking lot for Ramona Falls. You could turn off of Highway 26, head towards Lalo Pass, and then turn right. A little ways in, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 miles, turn right towards Ramona Falls parking trailhead. But the hike itself is 3.5 miles to the falls, and you can actually go across the bridge when you get here and you're ready to return, and there's like a loop so you can cross the bridge on the way back and loop back to the parking lot. It's about 7 miles total. I went ahead and collected some water. The next area I'll be stopping at is Muddy Fork, and as the name implies, the water can be a little murky, so I went ahead and collected some water here off of the Ramona Falls. And that's about it for the morning. Have to get started and get some motivation, and hopefully we'll reach Cloud Cap or beyond this afternoon. As you pass the bridge at Ramona Falls, you'll want to take the trail up, going uphill to the right here to follow Timberline. If you stay straight, you'll be on Pacific Crest Trail. Now both of these trails will meet up again at Top Spur Trailhead, but the Ramona Falls return to the parking lot, and the Pacific Crest Trail stay straight. Timberline Trail number 600 goes to the right. So leaving Ramona Falls, the Timberline Trail really takes a steep climb right away, coming up this ridge. If you follow the PCT, you can reach the same intersection at Top Spur Trailhead, but the PCT side, it winds down a little ways. You cross the river, and then it's more of a long climb. The side right here goes pretty quick, climbs up pretty quickly out towards Muddy Forks. Back in around 2020 or 2021, I believe it was 2021, some fires came through this area up ahead and wiped out a lot of plants and trees and things. And then the rain followed, and it wiped away a ridge that the trail crossed. So this trail was inaccessible for a couple years, and all of the Timberline Trail hikers had to follow the PCT side to Top Spur. And so it's 2025 now, September 26th, and this trail is reopened. I don't know exactly when it opened, but in the past year and a half or so. So it's good to be able to see this part of the mountain again. I don't know why I always start the day wearing a jacket or a sweater, knowing that the first ridge you start climbing up, you're going to take the jacket off and fold it up. So made a break there, little ways up the ridge, and going to fold up this coat. So as you start your morning hikes, keep that in mind. If there's any kind of uphill to begin the day, you're probably not going to need your coat. As you get to the top, well, I wouldn't say the top, but as you get to where the trail splits, might be a little rough to read there, but Yoakum Ridge Trail goes off to the right that way. And that, pretty steep hike, but it takes you up really high in elevation to where you get a really good view of Mount Hood. Timberline straight ahead. That ridge there is the ridge I had mentioned that fire swept through, and mudslides washed some of this trailhead away around this area here as well. Be following the pathway along towards Muddy Fork. It's going to loop back to the ridge on the other side. The far side, I think that's Bald Mountain Ridge, but we'll loop back around to Top Spur Trailhead, and around the other side of Bald Mountain Ridge, on the other side, the trail will loop back up towards McNeil Point and then Elk Cove. It's another one of those areas where you'll see fallen trees coming down the ridge. You got to kind of duck under. They do a pretty good job, you can see, of cutting stuff away and clearing the path. But sometimes you will have to climb over tree stumps or logs along the way. Waiting to see if I can actually see the sunrise, because the mountains in front of me, it may take a little longer before I actually see the sun. You can see the northwest side of Mount Hood now, and I can hear the water flowing down below at Muddy Fork. Some really nice views. The water coming off the mountain. A lot of this is still from snow melt coming off the glacier that remains up on Mount Hood year round. So most of the year you'll find water running as you do this hike on the Timberline Trail around the mountain. I know there's a few of you mushroom lovers out there. That one's growing off the side of the tree right here. See quite a few different types of mushrooms all along the pathway here. Some of those grow pretty big. That's just one. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of them all together. Some of these trees like this, you have to kind of bear hug. This one's a smaller one, so your backpack can rotate underneath. Otherwise, your backpack will hit the tree. So I've had to do a few of those along the way where these trees have fallen. If you do take the hike, you will come up on a few tough spots where you got to climb some rocks. And just know it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And so you want to be prepared, take your time, but there are some steep ridges. So you want to make sure you have your footing before you take that next step. Otherwise, it could be your last. Now, I'm almost to the waterways of Muddy Forks. You're starting to see a few flat and cleared out areas where people camp for the night. It's not too many, but there are a few just before Muddy Forks. Crossing Muddy Forks now. See, the water's not too bad, but sometimes it's a little more murky here than a few of the other areas. So you can collect water where you see some of the waterfalls along the way, or you can wait to get to the main stream. Well, there's Mount Hood behind me, crossing Muddy Fork right now. This is Bald Mountain Ridge. Wish there was a way to go up right there, but got to loop all the way around the ridge in the distance and come back up the other side. So, time to get at it. Here's the other part of Muddy Forks. I'll have to cross the water here, and then I'll work my way back up that ridge, back towards Top Spur Trailhead. There's another episode here from this viewpoint from Muddy Forks on RAD Discovery. If you want to check that out, you can see the flowing water with Mount Hood in the background. You can still see some snow as we're coming around. We're not quite on the north side, maybe northwest, but you can still see there's snow up there. As you make your way up the ridge after Muddy Forks, heading back to Top Spur Trailhead, kind of make your way up a little bit of a steep ridge, and it's pretty well shaded along the south side of Bald Mountain Ridge. You can see the sunlight ahead. So I'm about 2 or 2.5 miles from Top Spur Trailhead, and I'll be coming back out into the daylight before too long, which is good and bad, because it actually is nice to get some sunlight, but it is a bit warmer when you're hiking through it. So I'm coming up to a cutoff trail which goes up this ridge, and it heads over to continue on the Timberline Trail. Locals call it the Lollipop Loop. If you park at Top Spur Trailhead area, it's 1 mile up to the trailhead, and then you would come in from my left over here, and then you would take the cutoff trail and loop back around to the trailhead. And they call that the Lollipop Loop. But, it is maybe a little bit shorter for the route that I'm taking on the Timberline Trail. But I'm going to get to the trailhead because it's a nice rest spot. And it's a good place to get a cell phone signal. And finally got to see the sunshine here. The view of Mount Hood in the background. It's good to see the sunshine come up. Nice view of Mount Hood in the background. So to my right, this is where the cutoff trail I mentioned earlier comes over in to the Timberline Trail. Behind me is the Top Spur Trailhead. And so there's a really nice view if you stay on the trail up around that ridge. Then it winds its way down to the trailhead, and you come back up this way. But After that, it's on towards McNeil Point turnoff and Elk Cove. From Top Spur trailhead, the trail winds its way up. It's a bit of a climb along the ridge of Bald Mountain, and you work your way up. I'm heading towards a turnoff at McNeil Point, but up near along the way you'll see a little clearing with some big stone boulders and a little open area with a nice view. This is a good place to take a break, relax a bit, and enjoy the view. Just past the turnoff to McNeil Point. Now we're almost into the area of Karen Basin. So you see the waterfalls, plenty of places to get water. Really nice view here. The water heading down the mountain. Not sure if you can see it really well. A really nice view. Almost around to the north side of the mountain and heading through Karen Basin. It might be a little more of a climb before dropping into Elk Cove with a few viewpoints like this along the way. You see a lot of rock tumbling down off the side of that mountain. The trail continues through some meadows here. Well, here's the basin in Karen Basin, but it's C-A-R-I-N, Karen Basin. And you can see there's hikers along the path. We've already passed the point where McNeil Point turnoff is, so a lot of the day hikers come from Top Spur trailhead. They go up to McNeil Point and then go back down to the parking. So beyond that point, you start to see more of the hikers that are doing the Timberline or the multi-day hikes. Coming around this north side through Karen Basin, this is the second or end loop point to McNeil Point. So if you start at Top Spur trailhead, you can come up all the way to here, or you can make the first turn off to McNeil Point. But either way, there's a loop. If you come up, do the loop, and then go back to Top Spur trailhead, it's about 9.3 miles. So that's a really good day hike. You just have to drive up and park at the Top Spur trailhead, which it's a little bumpy road, better if you have a pickup, but you can make it in a passenger car. You can start to see the mountains here. That's Mount St. Helens. Caught a glimpse of Rainier and Adams just a minute ago. Coming up to another water crossing. Not too steep, you just have to watch your step. You can see a lot of the trees in here are bare. From what I've heard, there were fires that swept through this area way back in maybe 2011, I believe. And what you see is just what remains from the trees that and the area that got burned. All around it you see green, but in this whole area here you just see dry dead trees. So we'll work our way through here and up around the next ridge on the way to Elk Cove. So here is a nice viewpoint. You could see Adams in the background, Rainier, and in the distance to the left there is Mount St. Helens. Another water crossing. Got another ridge to climb up before going across and down into Elk Cove. So you can imagine how the ridges are around a mountain. You wind your way down one and back up the other. This water looks a little murky, so I've already collected some water earlier and filtered it into my container. So I try to make sure I have at least 1 to 2 quarts filtered, and depending on the time of the year, you can carry some water with you on top of that, especially in the hot months of the summer. Last night it was just below freezing overnight down by Ramona Falls. It was a really cold night. Time to cross. Here, almost around the north side, you can see a lake there. I believe that's Bull Run. I believe. Up near between Lalo Pass and Sentinel Peak. If you follow the Pacific Crest Trail towards the Columbia Gorge, you'll go by that area. I believe that's the water basin for Portland. Once again, you can see Mount St. Helens there. So I'm still working my way around here. Be going up this ridge around the other side, working my way back down to Elk Cove. Still crossing a few ridges. Just came here to a viewpoint. I've still got to make my way across here, work my way back up over that ridge before getting to Elk Cove. But you could see off in the distance here, the Columbia Gorge is just beyond these hills, before those mountains. You can see how in the distance you can see the prairie lands. It's all dry. East of the Cascade Range, or in California we call them the Sierra Nevadas, but the mountain ranges, everything on the east side is all desert, like Death Valley, east of Mount Whitney and Lake Tahoe, all the way up through Oregon into Washington. Everything on the east side is all wheat crops and farmlands. On the Washington side, you have the Yakima Valley and potato farms and Moses Lake, and crossing the northern point of the mountain, and I'm starting the descent down into Elk Cove. It's a pretty good drop in elevation as you drop down to Elk Cove. Elk Cove is a good place to camp for the night. There's several areas with a little water crossing right there. Cloud Cap is, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 miles beyond Elk Cove. So I'm going to try to reach Cloud Cap tonight. It's still early in the day. It's 1:30 p.m. So I'll see how the day goes and try to keep pushing on. Get a really good view of the north side of the mountain coming down the trail here to Elk Cove. And if you do camp out there, that's the view you'll have when you wake up in the morning. as you wind your way down the path along the creek there. Before you cross the waterway, you'll see some trees, and it looks a little dense, but there's some clearing in there. If you needed a camp spot, there's a few open areas in there that you can actually set up your tent. It's on the west side of the waterway. You'll see a little turnout right here to cut through. But there's some other areas on the east side of the waterway as well. Just so you know, if you come in and can't find a spot, there's some both on the south side when you cross the water on the south, or your right, closer to the mountain. And if you turn on one of the trails that goes left to the north, there's some more camp spots over there. Whenever you see a log or a branch like this, it's just a friendly reminder, that's not the path. Don't turn there. Keep going straight. After some of the water crossings, you'll hit a series of switchbacks to take you back up in elevation. Last water crossing is way down in that canyon. Sometimes you never know which direction you're going to take to get around the ridge. But when you do get up to a point, you usually have a really good view. Another water crossing. Getting closer to Cloud Cap. Every one of these ridges, you kind of cut back closer to the mountain and loop around. But the last one at Elliott Creek, it's a little bit bigger of a creek, and there's an 1,100 foot elevation gain in 1 mile stretch. So at the end of the day, you have that tough climb. Get to Cloud Cap today will be a 16-mile day. So the goal is to at least get there. If I get a little ways beyond that, that'll be even better. You reach the top of a ridge, you look across, and you can see the building at Cloud Cap. But there's still a ways to go. Have to go around a ridge here and then work my way down to the bottom of a ridge to cross Elliott Creek. And then there's some steep switchbacks to get up to Cloud Cap. But I'm close. You can see the dry desert lands in the distance there. This is the point where, you know, Cloud Cap is right there. But there's no wraparound of the ridge here. So, to get to Elliott Creek, you have to go all the way down a zigzag to the bottom. And then cross Elliott Creek, and on the hillside right there, there's zigzags that take you all the way up to Cloud Cap at the top. So here we go. Cross the river down there, but it may look like scattered timber on the hillside. You zoom into it, you can see those are switchbacks that go straight up the side of that hill there to Cloud Cap. So when you get to Elliott Creek, you'll see some big rocks to your right, and a lot of people climb down the rocks. But if you come down a ways, you'll see there's a rope, and so it's a lot easier to get down using the rope. So you can walk your way down a ways and then use the rope for the rough stretch right in here down these boulders. But hey, if you're young and adventurous and you want to climb the boulders, you can go right ahead and do that. But the rope is here for a reason. It's a pretty steep descent, and it's definitely worth using the rope. I decided to come down a little ways below here, across here, and then you have to climb up a little bit to pick the trail up, but a little bit easier crossing this than some of those big boulders. Come up across the river, you see little rock formation or cairns guiding you to the beginning of the trail. So this is the beginning of the famous switchbacks leading up to Cloud Cap, capping off the day with the steep climb. These switchbacks are no joke. 1,100 feet elevation climb in 1 mile. I usually take a breather at every second switchback just to catch my breath, but I'm not sure how many switchbacks there are, but I'll find out. I'm at the 9th switchback. I know it still goes further and around to the campground, but the starting point is down at the bottom of the canyon there. Came across from that ridge over on the other side. See the sun's dropping down. It's about 5 p.m. right now. So far I've counted 9 switchbacks. There may be more up ahead. So I made it up the ridge and there were 14 switchbacks. But this is Cloud Cap campground. There's a $20 fee to camp here. There's a few areas just beyond here where you can stop to camp at. You'll see the map here, and we're up here at Cloud Cap. But I may go up just a little ways. There's other campgrounds, like Tilly Jane has a campground, but you got to kind of turn off and go away from the Timberline Trail to go to Tilly Jane campground. So I may just stay on 600 and just find a campsite along the way. And then I'll follow tomorrow, wherever I stop tonight, I'll Still a little bit of a climb tonight or today, but tomorrow I'll follow this back down the ridge by Newton Creek and come back around to the lodge. So right now it's about 14 more miles to the lodge. So whatever I do right now before I set up camp will take away from the 14 miles for tomorrow. So when you come up the switchbacks to Cloud Cap Campground, you come in right here, and here's the main bulletin here. And if you camp here, just know that when you get up in the morning, you'll want to continue on 600 trail this way. So I'm pushing a little ways past Cloud Cap, and the name can be deceiving. If you think Cloud Cap is the peak of the height of the elevation, it's not. So as soon as you hike out of Cloud Cap, it goes up an incline. So I'm going to try and get over maybe just beyond this ridge before I camp. I'll be closer to the northeast side where I'll be able to see the sunrise early in the morning. Cloud Cap is tucked away down in the trees, bottom of a little bit of the ridge, and you don't really see the sun early in the morning. So try to camp where I'm going to get a good sunrise view in the morning and get a good start. Well, I was able to get in, set up camp for the evening before it got dark, which is a really good thing if you can get set up before it gets dark. Otherwise, you got to start getting headlamps out. But I made a little ways past Cloud Cap. There's kind of like a sandy and rocky area that you have to climb. So I'm not all the way to the peak before you start to drop and descend around the northeast side. Not quite there, maybe halfway up to the peak from Cloud Cap. So you can see I got a tent set up over here, and got my water station set up over here, hanging from the tree, so I can just drop the filter down to my container below. Got my food set up, getting ready to heat some dinner. I've got MREs. Last night I had a freeze-dried meal. You have to boil water. This pack, you don't have to boil any water. You just add water to a heat pack, and you put the MRE in there, and it heats up pretty quick. But you gotta keep it away from you. Don't put it in your tent. It smells. But I got my sleeping bag set up with my sleeping pad. I usually just tuck my backpack in over here, throw my coat in the corner so I can kind of use it as a pillow. I actually had my sleeping pad go flat last night, so I'm not sure. I might have to use my coat for a cushion on the ground here, but we'll see. So I'm all set up, getting ready for dinner. See you tomorrow morning. Sun is up and shining. It's the final day. I'm all packed up this morning, and probably have about 12 miles, maybe 12 or 13 miles back to the lodge. It's a little bit of a climb to get to the high point. And then there's a long descent. Sometimes on a long hike, the downhill is harder than the uphill. Just it's harder on your legs and your muscles, and your feet too. But the hardest part of the morning is putting the pack back on and getting started. So here we go. Well, first thing in the morning, it's a climb. See the rocky pathway here, and in the distance you can see some wood posts sticking up, the markers up to the top of that ridge. So eventually I may have 1.5 miles or 2 miles to get to that peak, and then it'll be a long stretch around the northeast side and down around towards I want to say Newton Creek, I think it's called, and then towards the meadows. Well, crossing that north to northeast side of the ridge, this is the probably the closest point I'll be to the summit there. You can still see the snow and ice on the backside on the north side there. It's a glacier, so pretty much year-round it'll be like that. I've still got to go across these ridges here before I can start to break and work my way down around. There'll be some ice likely that I'll have to cross, and some of these ridges will still have ice. Maybe not too much, maybe, I don't know, 30-40 feet that you have to cross, depending on the year. Give you a 360 view here. There's the sun coming up in the east. Eastern Oregon. Looking north into Washington there. And you can see Adams, Rainier in the distance in the back. Can't see Mount St. Helens from here. It's a little bit over there, over that way. But getting it done this morning. Next ridge, and then I got like a 5 or 6 mile stretch of downhill. Some years the ice crossing is a lot wider than this, but it's less than 15 feet to cross. And there's even enough soil where people have placed rocks to make sure you don't slip. But so still got to be careful. You don't want to tumble down the rocks there, but not a bad crossing at all. Still coming across this ridge along the backside on the northeast. You can see the big cairns here. You'll see them helping you guide your way. Sometimes, depending on the time of the year, if there's heavy snow, you might see more than one, because one might have been covered up with snow and there'll be one at a lower level, but they help guide you across. Just know that if you're here in the summer and the temperatures are going to be hot during the day, this is like crossing Mordor, and it's like dry, rocky, and it can get really hot. Big difference from the southwest side of the mountain where you have all the trees and the shade. So if you have to cross this side, you want to try to do that early in the morning, especially if the temperatures are going to be really hot. Almost made it to the ridge here. You can see the green shrubbery up ahead. Crossing over little ice area and some rocks. And this last ridge you see right here, you'll see some trails drop down into this canyon. And some people take a few shortcuts on the lower side or not, but you'll see it can be deceiving because there's a trail that goes up to the summit there. Really nice view, massive canyon. The trail for Timberline Trail, you want to follow it to the left around, and it loops around and down. So normally you stay along the mountain, and as we'll see later, there's another example of that at Newton Creek down below. So I decided to climb that summit, and as you can see, there's a really massive basin over here at the top of the summit. There used to be a trail here, and I don't know if people still try to climb it. It would be very dangerous. I don't even attempt it. But I'll end up winding around this canyon, around these hills to the east side. You can see in the distance there, once again, there's Mount Jefferson, which is on the south side. The lodge is around the other side of the mountain that way. And I'll be heading back that way. At the top of the summit here, you'll see there's a meadow. You can't camp up here in the meadow. Any of the areas along the Timberline Trail, you're not supposed to camp in the meadows. So at the peak here, you see a meadow. It's really nice. It looks real welcoming, but it's prohibited to camp there. So I went to that right trail up to the summit. Now I'm going to head back up to the peak here, and then it's downhill for quite a ways until I come to the meadows around the east side. So I made it back up to the peak here. I came across the ridge from over there, and this is that summit. So I'm going to be heading this way downhill. It winds its way around. It does kind of look like you're heading in the wrong direction when you're going down kind of to the north, but it does wind it and wrap its way around. In the distance, you see the mountains there. That's actually the other side of the Columbia Gorge. I'm on the lower side of that summit. Goes out up above. You can see the snow melt still coming down. I believe that forms what is Newton Creek down below. But I'll be winding my way to the left around the hills, and down in a lower elevation. You drop down across that creek and come back up the other side. Back into the wooded area. Finally got to see some trees again. Still heading downhill, but the trees are really nice to get some shade. But it's a really nice day. Temperatures aren't too high. High 60s, maybe low 70s. You can see the pathway has worn itself down about a foot below the ground level. I'm on the east side now, or coming around to the east side of the mountain. And the Pacific Crest Trail, coming up from Mexico all the way to Canada, it used to loop around the east side of Mount Hood. But the ice and the snow, it remains for so long in the season that they changed it to the west side. So now the Pacific Crest Trail sticks with the Timberline Trail, and then it goes around to the north side, and then they split off. but I'm sure many of PCT hikers have walking this path all the way on their way to Canada. Here at a junction, there's a few camp spots here, and Timberline Trail winds its way down to the creek. I think there's a straighter shot that way, but it's pretty steep. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with the Timberline Trail and wind my way back down. Here's an example of a fallen tree that is not going to be moved very easy. So the path will adjust to get around. You reach the bottom towards the creek, you'll see a few guides for the pathway here. You see some tree branches stuck in the ground, but that summit up there is where I was earlier. I wound all the way around to here. Gonna cross over. I'll have to climb back up this ridge to get back across to the meadows. There's another ski resort up here, and I'll be crossing through some meadows and underneath some ski lifts. So leaving Newton Creek, little rough climb right here to get back on the trail. It leads up above. But you can see Newton Creek winds all the way down to Highway 35, which comes up out of Hood River. So now I'm gonna head around the east side towards the meadows and the ski resorts. After you come up the ridge out of Newton Creek, you cross the small creek here, and then the trail goes up to the right. You'll see they dropped some logs and left them there just to let you know that's not the route. Pick it up to the right here. Now here's a little intersection. On my left, you see a sign. It's not well placed. It says Timberline Trail this way, but it's really turns to the right. Newton Creek is a long descent. You can take that way, but you'll be going downhill a long ways. So we got to loop back around this way, around the ridge to the other side. Crossed a few ridges, almost to the meadows. Come up on another fallen tree. Sometimes the broken branches make good handles. Sometimes the ones you don't see can scratch your leg, like I just did. See the east side of the mountain and the big ridge here. What you also see though is a lot of trees. There's another creek here I'm dropping down to after Newton Creek. I'll work our way back up that ridge into the meadows and the ski resort area. There's a few ridges you have to kind of work your way down and wind your way back up before you get back around to the lodge. I know the last one is kind of sandy as you're climbing uphill at the end of the hike, so it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're tired. There's the view from the east side. We're working my way down this canyon. All right, there's a little waterfall right here along the way. One of the spots where you can get some water. Maybe not every time you pass by, different times of year, but most of the time. Every time I've come by in September, I've seen water. Another view here, the waterfall coming out of the mountain. Working our way up the next ridge, almost to the meadows. Each time you think you're almost to the next meadow, there's another ridge to climb. So, almost there. So I made it around to the ski lifts. I'll be crossing the meadow now. You can see the ski lifts here. They're idle right now. But it's a nice sunny day, kind of warm. But as you dip into the canyons behind the trees, it cools down really nice. You can see the top of the lifts there up at the top of the ridge. Trail was winding its way down through the meadows here to pass the second ski resort area. You'll hear waterfalls. Sometimes they're running under the pathway, flowing down the hill. But I know there'll be another creek to cross and a steep sandy ridge to go back up before we get to the lodge. Here's another ski resort. This is South Canyon. You see the Mount Hood up above, the peak. We're still crossing the meadows. I'm almost to the last creek I'll have to cross before the sandy ridge climb to the lodge. It's getting closer. But I'm getting more tired too. So I'm sure it'll be a tough climb. I'm heading across the meadows still. Past the marker, 4 miles to Timberline Lodge. So, getting closer to the end of the trail. My energy level is dropping. As to be expected, but I keep pushing on. I'm almost there. Just crossed the White River. See coming off the other end of the mountain here. Just about to make the last push up for the lodge. Got about 2 miles left. Short break and a hydration pack and I'll be ready to go. So I'm here at the intersect before getting back to the Timberline Lodge. And this is where the PCT hikers coming from Mexico heading up to Canada, this is where they intersect with the Timberline Trail. They're probably about 1.5 miles from the lodge, just around the ridge, a little ways away. There's Mount Hood in the background. We're working our way back up. And it's a little deceiving. There's a big ridge. So you have to climb up and around and drop back into the lodge. So we're not quite there yet, but you get a glimpse of it. We're close. On the last stretch, making it up that last climb before dropping down to the lodge. As I mentioned, it is a little deceiving because you turn right away from the lodge and climb up to get around and drop down to the lodge. But just up ahead. That looks like a muddy creek right there. just finished the Timberline Trail hike. I just got back to the lodge here, and here's the pathway beginning. All done. Left Thursday afternoon just after 3, and it's Saturday afternoon just after 3:30. So just over 2 days. Camped out 2 nights and hiked during 3 days, and made it back around. Whew. It's definitely a hike that will drain your will and your spirit at times, but you have to put one foot in front of the other, just like in life. Keep taking steps forward and you'll get to where you're trying to get to. Signing off.